The question of when we'll actually run out of oil is absolutely the wrong question to be asking. We should be asking, when will production peak? Back in the 1950s, M. King Hubbert, the petroleum geologist who worked for Shell and a bunch of other companies and taught at UCLA and MIT and a bunch of other universities, realized that for any given oil province, when about half the oil has been extracted, it becomes more difficult to extract what's left. And so the rate of extraction begins to taper off. The production peaks.
Without those fossil fuels, the Industrial Revolution would never have sputtered to life. And without them, it will collapse. If all of the services performed for us on a daily basis by fossil fuels had to be done once again by human muscle power, lighting our homes, cleaning our clothes, vacuuming our carpets, pushing us around on the road to get to and from wherever we're going from and to, if all of that had to be done by human muscle power once again, it would take about 300 people working hard to keep us in the manner to which we become accustomed. I believe that event, the U.S. oil production peak of 1970, deserves to be considered the most important economic event of the 20th century. But when global oil production peaks and begins its inevitable decline, we're not going to be able to make up for the shortfall by importing oil from other planets. We're going to have to make do with what we have. And what we have will be shrinking, declining with every passing year. Currently, the world uses something on the order of 84, 85 million barrels of oil per day. By 2010, we're going to have to find and develop about 30 million barrels a day of new production capacity just to stay even. Forget about increases in demand. If you count that, then we're talking about closer to 45 or 50 million barrels a day. It's possible to look out for the next 5 years and say, well, what's in the pipeline? What's on the conveyor belt? And when we look, we don't find nearly enough. So Skrybowski calculates that the likely all-time global oil production peak will occur in 2007, 2008.
Prices will skyrocket. We'll have a virtual complete shortage. There will still be oil in the ground, but it's erroneous to think that there will be a transition or a slowing down of the economy which is so dependent on oil. And this brings us to the techno-fix. People imagine that solar panels will work and that wind power and other forms of alternative energy and renewable energy will supply all our needs and that we will continue this wonderful way of life where we have mastered nature and we have all these amazing gadgets and technology to be the envy of the civilized world. It really isn't going to work that way.
That's really the big question. Can we continue running things the way we have with these substitutes? And the answer is no. And it's sort of the dirty secret of the American predicament is that our economy is now based almost entirely on the creation of suburban sprawl, on the servicing of it, and the furnishing of it.
Without energy, nothing happens. Energy is 100% of the economy. You can't change out the energy infrastructure of a society overnight. It takes decades, and it costs a lot of money. We're talking whether it's nuclear power or solar or wind or any combination of the above, we're talking about trillions of dollars of new investment that will be needed.
Even if they were maximized with planning kind of approach and an attempt at transitioning to these and phasing out fossil fuels, it really isn't going to work because oil is unique in its high energy content and its flexible uses. And our whole infrastructure is about petroleum. So we need to think about and start taking action on decreasing radically our use of petroleum and not imagining that there is a pie-in-the-sky techno-fix around the corner. Things are so pressurized today with the economy relying absolutely on more and more growth and debt. And the kind of expansion has only been possible through unlimited petroleum supplies.
developers, 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 developers. Developers, 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 developers. Yes!
When this becomes too tight to accommodate growth, we're going to have a cessation of growth, and that will translate to a lot of job loss. It will be a collapse of certain kinds of industries, and then you'll have a general economic collapse. What we'll see is probably an instant type of depression, and that will include die-off. We're overpopulated in this country as well, and any part of the world that is very petroleum dependent is going to be a lot worse off than third world countries.
And they're going to create tremendous domestic political turmoil in the attempt to hold on to those entitlements which cannot be held on to. So I think it's going to be a big goddamn mess. I think it's probably going to lead to violence. It may lead to some degree to the dissolution of our democratic institutions in the United States. And we may not recognize our nation by the time that
food and agriculture. In effect, we are eating oil and natural gas right now. We don't think of it that way, and maybe it doesn't taste like that, but pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers, all made from fossil fuels, from oil and natural gas. And then foods are processed and shipped. The typical food item on our plate has traveled 1,300 to 1,500 miles to get to us, fossil-fueled miles. So we're going to be faced with a challenge in feeding ourselves without as much oil to go around.
When we have overpopulation, having vastly overshot the carrying capacity of the ecosystem, and we're virtually eating petroleum when so much food is produced and we do so many things with energy to replace human labor, we're not going to be able to instantly go to a sustainable lifestyle and care for so many people as we're presently doing.
What drives the population increase from the beginning seems to have been domestication, and because it didn't exist before that. I mean, the anthropologists have noticed that the population began shooting up with the adoption of agriculture, and so if you pull the plug on that, in other words, looking at population as more of an effect than a cause.
You can make some persuasive arguments that where the world is revving up for a combination of events that are going to considerably thin out the population.